Hello everybody and welcome to a new video for Luck Poker. Today we are going to analyze a hand I lost at an L200 and we are going to understand if my hand made any sense or if it was just a spew. So let's start with the action because this hand was kind of crazy and let's see how did it play out. I opened from middle position with ace-king suited, pretty standard, and the big blind, who was a regular, chose to 3-bet me. I think with this hand we can both call or 4-bet. It's going to depend mainly on our opponent, but if we don't have any specific read on how he is defending versus 4-bets and we just know he's a reg, I think we should just randomize it. And here I chose to 4-bet this time and he chose to call. One thing that I don't expect my average opponent to do in this situation is to call me enough out of position with aces, kings and any monster hand. We get to the flop then, which is 4-3-3 with a flush draw. If any of us has a 3 more often than not, I think it's me usually, because I certainly 4-bet as a bluff ace 3. But I don't know if my opponent calls that out of position, which I don't think is not that common. And also ace-4 suited, which is a top pair, I think I might have it and it doesn't. The same way, I think that of course I have an advantage regarding the kind of overpairs I have in general, because I certainly have aces, kings and maybe even queens, while I think he is mainly calling with, on average, weaker pocket pairs than I'm 4-betting with. Having said that, I think this is a spot in which we should c-bet at a very high frequency because the board is pretty good for our range and not that much for his. So once he checked, I think c-betting here is pretty standard. I think I'm c-betting range, as I said. And the weird thing is that he chose to check raise. I would say this is a pretty weird play because, you know, if he's low played pre-flop with aces and kings, I don't think he would check raise this much on this board. And also, I don't think if he has something like 10s, jacks, maybe 9s, I don't think the average player is going to check raise them that much. I'm not saying it's technically bad because, you know, those kind of hands need protection versus a hand like mine, but I simply don't think this is gonna happen enough, even at an L200 zone. So, since this check raise looks so suspicious, I chose here to just jam with ace-king. Anyway, I mean, if he calls me, I think I might have some equity anyway, because, again, I don't think he has that much aces or kings, and even if he had, I don't think he should raise with them, or that he would. And so, you know, we're in a situation where winning the pot right now seems pretty awesome, because the pot is already huge. If it goes wrong and he calls, we probably have some equity still, so I don't mind this bluff actually. I didn't mind it in game and I don't mind it now. I wouldn't like this line if my opponent is a bad regular, because if he's a bad regular, I don't think he would ever be able to check raise here as a bluff, and he probably would show up only with aces and kings, even if I said it was unlikely. But you know, if you're versus a bad, predictable regular, when he does a weird line, it's usually more likely that he has weird value played in a weird way rather than a weird bluff. So I think it's probably fine, in my opinion, as long as our opponent is a decent player. We will see with GTO Wizard better if this line makes any sense versus an optimal opponent. He ended up calling, and you know, I wasn't happy, of course, but when he showed his hand, I was a bit surprised because he had at the end 10 jack suited, which too bad that we hit the king of diamonds, but yeah, I mean, it was an interesting line. I don't think I would play this 10 jack suited this way, but we will see also that with GTO Wizard. And let's see. I mean, it's gonna be some interesting analysis, I think. Okay, so here we are on GTO Wizard. I already set the solution. Let's start to see which are the ranges that GTO Wizard suggests to use as a 4-bet and as a call to the 4-bet. What we see now is my 4-betting range, what should be at least for GTO Wiz. And yeah, we have ace-3 suited, but very rarely, to be honest, and GTO Wizard doesn't 4-bet ace-4, he 4-bets ace-5 a bit more. Of course, you can change these ranges a bit, and I think most people would have ace-3 and ace-4 sometimes, maybe even more frequently in their 4-betting range. Regarding the value, we have aces, of course, ace-king in about 50% of the times, which is what I was also planning in game, and we have kings more often than not. Then we should have some decent suited Broadway to 4-bet again as a bluff, and GTO Wizard also 4-bets jacks, 10s, and sometimes 9s, and very low frequencies, which is something I typically do not recommend in-game in these situations, simply because the field typically plays a bit tighter than Wizard when he defends versus a 4-bet. Regarding what my opponent should have called, we will see here. So he should have, well, ace-3 suited is really a small portion of his range, and ace-4 and ace-5 suited are usually used as a 5-bet jam as a bluff, so we shouldn't have those kind of hands. Of course, he's jamming more often than not aces, and ace-king, it's about 50-50 for the offset combination, and he does 4-bets every single time ace-king suited. He should slow play, I mean, he should have some kings in his calling range, and also mainly queens and jacks. Then he should call a decent portion of his suited connectors, as you see here. Some ace-x suited as well. But, you know, apart from that, he doesn't call much. So when the flop hits, of course, he should check range, as you see, and once he checks, this is our betting strategy. As you see, we can probably simplify it with a bet range and a very small sizing, which was definitely my plan. So our ace-king was definitely here. Every hand we 4-bet basically wants to bet small. And again, I would use only one sizing. I wouldn't mix in these bigger sizes, which will just complicate things, I would say, unnecessarily, because we don't have any hand which is mainly bet with a big sizing. Every hand that you see in our betting range is bet very frequently with the small sizing, and small portions of them are betting with bigger sizing. So if we just want to simplify, I would say the small one is the best. Also considering that we are making a simplification in betting range and we're betting more than this, and of course I expect the small bet to be even more frequent. So yeah, nothing really surprising here. What might be surprising is our opponent check raise, which, I mean, he should do it sometimes, of course, as you see. Raising is part of his strategy. He should do it sometime with queens, and as you see, he should never do it with aces and kings, even when he's low played them, but you know, it makes sense because those are pretty solid hands. There is no need to fast play them, differently from queens, which is of course needs a bit more of protection, and he shouldn't raise jacks typically, so the only real value he should raise is pocket queens, and then of course he could have some bluffs there, 5-6 suited for example. He sometimes uses as a bluff. He shouldn't raise really 10-jack with a diamond, not that frequently at least. What he should mainly raise as a bluff also are, yes, some flush draws, but stronger ones like ace-queen of diamond, ace-jack of diamond, things like this. Yeah, he shouldn't really raise that, but, you know, I think it's, you know, maybe he had a read on me, maybe he thought I would fold much more than I should, which I think it may be very likely to happen, I would say, at these stakes even. So yeah, I think, I mean, theoretically speaking, the raise with 10-jack wasn't that great, but as I said, I mean, I think in the field it may work well, so I don't want to judge my opponent's line. I think it can, I wouldn't be surprised if it works well, so nothing to say that there. And to that, let's see what I should shove. As you see, I mainly shove my flush draws, of course, if I have them. And I can shove with my value hands, like kings and aces. And if you see, ace-king is sometimes shoved, sometimes not. It's definitely shoved if you have the flush draw. It's not terrible if you don't have it. So I would say that theoretically speaking, my line was okay, even if it shouldn't be done that frequently. Of course, we saw that my opponent was check raising more than he should, theoretically speaking, so I think in that situation it was okay for me to shove this kind of hands even a bit more. So, you know, with this analysis, I think that picking that hand as a bluff wasn't that terrible, especially versus somebody who showed up being check raising a bit more than theoretically optimal. So I would say this time my hand was not a mistake, was not a spew, of course assuming we don't do it that much, and I think it was a nice play that we should sometimes incorporate in our game. I hope you enjoyed this review, and thanks for watching.